Hi, it's Dwyer, dwyercrime.blog, a free site, also always 1776.com. Today is September 21st, 2025. Folks, let's talk a little bit more about the Charlie Kirk assassination. Let me just make a point. It's an all or nothing point. Right? I don't believe they're going to be able to convict Tyler Robinson of the crime. Right? Frankly, the evidence doesn't match. On the show Redacted, take a look at it. This is a video from 2 days ago. It's on YouTube. Just Google Redacted. They have the video of Tyler Robinson running across the roof right after the shot was fired, or at least heard. Right now, you actually see the people in the crowd ducking down. The shot has just been fired moments before. Right, folks? What that means is that Tyler Robinson is up and running seconds after we're told he fired the shot. So he had no time to disassemble this weapon. That's not even an option. He would be running with the murder weapon, which is, of course, a rifle. So we have the video, and this is the whole case. This is the entire case against him. We have the video of him jumping off the building. The million-dollar question here, because understand, the rifle, he doesn't have time to disassemble it. If people are ducking down as he's running across the roof, he's running right after firing the gun. If you believe he had a gun on the roof, right? If you believe the government's timeline. So just to understand, for the government's timeline to be correct, for Robinson to actually have a gun on the roof and to have not ditched the gun in the wooded area before he even gets to the roof. Right? Understand, if it's a conspiracy, somebody else may have fired the shot. Robinson would have to have the gun out. Because it's not disassembled, there's no time. He would have to have the gun out when he jumps off the building. In other words, whoever they hire to prosecute this case, the centerpiece of the case is going to be him jumping off the building. Can you see the rifle in that film footage? Right, folks? I'm sure the FBI is going to have that footage, put in high definition. That's assuming they can match the bullet that hit Charlie Kirk to the gun. If they can't, then it's academic. Then Robinson is a decoy. He's not the shooter. Don't get me wrong. There is something called felony murder. If I'm a conspirator to a murder, then, even though I'm not the shooter, I could be convicted. Just like if I'm the getaway driver to a bank robbery and my cohorts in the bank murdered someone in furtherance of the bank robbery. I could be convicted for that. Right? Understand, Robinson doesn't have to be the shooter to be convicted. He just has to be a member of the conspiracy. But of course, one wonders how the government could even prove that if they aren't able to arrest anybody. Because of course we know Robinson in custody is not cooperating with law enforcement. So here's what I see, and it is a little iffy. He has the knapsack. We know the gun's not in the knapsack. Right? Maybe he took off the scope and he put the scope in the knapsack, but even that's hard to believe. Right? Because there just isn't enough time. In other words, people are ducking down as he's running across the roof. It looks like he fires the gun, then gets up and starts running. Right? But just understand, the base part of the gun should be out. We're to believe that a guy who got 99th percentile on the ACT, his getaway plan was to jump off the building with the gun exposed. Here's the problem. I don't see the gun in the video. In my opinion, it's not readily apparent. Right? A lot's going on in the video. He has what looks like a jacket or a towel out. He has his knapsack. It's a two-part dismount off the building. What you don't see is a clear picture of the gun. That's iffy. Understand, too, there's more to the video. After he dismounts off the building, right? And it's a high-risk dismount. Understand, John Wilkes Booth broke a leg jumping off the platform after he killed Lincoln. Right? A lot could have happened. Sprained ankle, you name it, broken leg. We're to believe that this guy makes it off the building. Then he walks around the parking lot. I don't see the firearm as he walks around the parking lot. And understand, on the way there, as he walks through the neighborhood, he has a limp. Let me point out, too, he's barely on campus. If I'm to believe that the gun is in the knapsack when he's on his way there, it seems to me that he'd have a hard time with all the adrenaline, with the paucity of time, because he's only on campus for half an hour or less before the shooting. He'd have a hard time taking out the gun and then assembling the gun. Understand how high risk it is. According to reports, where he was on the roof, and authorities are not showing you this film, was actually on camera. Right? There's, just like we see him jumping off the roof, there's supposed to be a camera on the roof. So there should be footage of him with the rifle laying down on the building. Right? Well, folks, if he had the gun in the knapsack on the way there, and I'm telling you the gun, even disassembled, wouldn't fit in that knapsack, he would have to assemble the gun on the roof. That would take time. That would require tools. If he had the gun in his pants as he gets to the roof, then he'd have to be the guy on the roof taking off his pants to take out the rifle. It would be messy. Someone looking at the roof wouldn't see a guy lying down on the roof who was barely visible. Rather, they would see a guy taking off his pants so he could take out a loaded rifle. So, folks, the timeline doesn't match up. More importantly, if you have 12 jurors in a box, and one of them looks at this film and is not convinced that this guy has a rifle on him as he leaves the building, especially if they have that rifle in court and the jury can see how big and clunky the rifle is, and they're looking on this film and this 22-year-old who's supposed to be a non-professional is able to jump off the building and do it fluidly enough where there's a question for many, myself included, as to whether that film shows a rifle. if there are reasonable doubts on whether he has a rifle as he dismounts the building. One juror, if not more, could say, I'm sorry, I have reasonable doubts. Let's go further. If he's on the roof and there is film of him with a rifle on the roof and he's firing the rifle, there'd still be a question as to whether he's actually the person who hit Charlie Kirk or whether somebody else around approximately the same time fired the fatal shot on Charlie Kirk, and this guy's just a decoy on a roof with a rifle pretending to shoot Kirk from 200 yards away. Let me close with this, and it's part of American history. You can look this up. I want you to look this up. You know, in all the hubbub of the JFK assassination, where we were talking about whether Lee Harvey Oswald could get off the shots from his misaligned Carcano rifle, right? And of course, you know, the Warren Commission, Arlen Specter, came up with the idea of the magic bullet, right? Where the bullet hits Kennedy in the back, comes out his throat, goes into the front seat, hits Connally, causes several wounds on Connally, shatters his wrist as Connally's holding his hat, right? And comes to rest in the front seat, which we know now is false, right? Because the secret agent who found the bullet in the back seat where Kennedy was sitting has written a book now, right? Well, just understand, James Teague, T-A-G-U-E, let's say Teague, James Teague, was standing a little bit off at the side. He was there to watch the presidential motorcade. And believe it or not, part of a bullet hit him in the face, hit his right cheek, which was bleeding. The bullet apparently then lodged in concrete right by where Teague was standing. Just understand what happened. You would have thought that if people really wanted to solve the Kennedy assassination, we'd be hearing about the bullet fragment in the concrete right by where James Teague was standing. Right? T-A-G-U-E. Look him up. Google him. Would you believe that they actually came and paved over where that bullet was? No one has matched that bullet fragment to Oswald's gun. Right, folks? Some would claim that that's, you know, spoiling the evidence. Right? In a case where we're wondering if Oswald fired the shots that hit Kennedy and Connally. By the way, Connally didn't believe it. Right? Connally went to his death not believing that there was only one gunman. Right? Well, just understand, in that case, where we're supposed to believe the government wanted to do a thorough investigation, where you had the Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren actually join up with senators and representatives, right? Future President Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission. And where they, you know, looked at the evidence, apparently they never looked at the bullet fragment that landed right by James Teague. Right? If you investigate the Kennedy assassination even more, you'll find out that someone clearly is firing from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Right? The question is, whether that person was actually the assassin. Right? You have the same problems here, folks. Would it surprise you to know that Charlie Kirk, who was killed the second week of this month by a sniper who we believe right now was on the roof, would it surprise you to hear that the university has actually started repaneling the top of the roof already? This seems to me to be out of some cover-up playbook, right? We look back at the Kennedy assassination, and it's hard to believe that the bullet fragment that landed right by James Tague wasn't fully investigated, that the area got paved over. It's hard to believe that the limo that Kennedy got shot in was washed the day of the shooting. They didn't even view the limo as a crime scene. And you had the President of the United States and you had the then Governor of Texas both shot. And they cleaned out the interior of the limo. Well, folks, it might surprise people to know that they've already been doing work on the roof of the university where this shooter is supposed to have shot from. Somebody please tell me, and it's September 21st, right? Charlie Kirk was shot this month. What's the rush? Who at the university feels a need to have construction work done on the roof the same month? I mean, literally within days of Charlie Kirk being assassinated on campus. One would have expected the Board of Trustees to say, look, this is a national story. It involves our university. People are going to remember that Charlie Kirk lost his life here. Let's cooperate fully with law enforcement. Even if law enforcement tells us, hey, you can continue construction on the roof. It seems to me, if I were a trustee at the university, I'd say, let's not do so. Right? This seems a little bit hasty to me. Let's leave that roof as it was, unimpeded. Let's tell law enforcement, and there are different levels, as you can imagine. Right? Kash Patel, the FBI, they're involved. I imagine the local government is involved, right? You know, some third-party groups might want to be involved. Charlie Kirk was someone with status. Folks, incredibly, just like they repaved the area where the bullet landed near James Tague, right after the assassination of a United States president. Incredibly here, they're doing construction work on the roof where the assassin is supposed to have fired from. It makes no sense. Let me add one final caveat here too. Right, just understand, this assassin dismounts right by a crowded parking lot. Right? He runs across the roof. When he gets off the building, he's no longer running. Right? He's walking. No one stops him. Now, understand, it's shocking if you think the rifle's been disassembled and is in the knapsack. Right? Because if they stopped him, they looked in the knapsack and they saw rifle parts, this guy's finished. Folks, you should be even more shocked by the fact that the guy doesn't have any time to disassemble the rifle. So we're to believe, if we believe the official government version, right? And I should say the current government version, right? Because they arrested an older guy who they thought was the killer. In other words, the government's version is changing over time. But if we believe the current version, the guy has the rifle out. You don't see it on film. But the guy's supposed to have the rifle out, so as he walks around the parking lot, someone who walks up to him would see him carrying a long rifle. Right? He'd be carrying something. And of course, he would have just jumped off a roof. Talk about a suspicious looking character. No one stops him. He makes it to the woods where we're to believe he changes clothes. Folks, he's doing too much for the little he has. If clothes are in the knapsack, then you know a disassembled rifle is not. He leaves the gun, as I mentioned before, and this is crucial. If the gun's disassembled, the story's bogus, because he doesn't have time to disassemble the gun. If the gun's not assembled, then we're to believe a guy who scored in the 99th percentile on the ACT decided he was going to kill Charlie Kirk and then walk around with the rifle after the shooting. And by the grace of God, somehow not be stopped. Be able to actually leave the gun, right, with the bullets that have, colorful markings on them, and then make it all the way home. Right, folks? One wonders, since he's writing stuff online, why is he even trying to get away? Right? Did this guy think he could write stuff online about wanting to kill Charlie Kirk and go back to living the life he had? Folks, I think there's reasonable doubt here. Please, pull up the FBI's own video of this guy dismounting the roof and ask yourself, do I see a rifle? If it's unclear to you, if you're thinking to yourself, he might have had a rifle on him, but I'm not 100% certain and stuff like that. Just imagine 11 other jurors with the same kind of hesitation. I mean, understand, if it's 50-50 whether he has a rifle, and I don't see one, but if it's 50-50 whether he has a rifle as he jumps off the building and as he's walking around the parking lot, and he doesn't look to be looking down and wrapping anything or anything like that. If it's 50-50, that's reasonable doubt. Right, folks? Dare I say, if it's 70-30, if you have 30% doubt on whether he has the rifle, I think that's reasonable doubt. Right? Beyond a reasonable doubt really requires, near certainty, if not complete certainty. Look at the film yourself, realizing the guy's seen running across the roof right as people are ducking. He doesn't have time to disassemble the rifle. So the rifle's either out or it's not. How many people? There's a car driving in the parking lot. You wonder, how many people is the government going to be able to find who can say, yes, I saw the guy when he jumped off the roof, I was the driver in the car in the parking lot, and it looked to me like he was carrying a firearm. Right, folks? I know Utah's a red state, but you and I know a young person with a rifle on campus is a big no-no in most of the United States, especially with all these school shootings, right? Remember the Virginia Tech shooting, right? We're to believe this guy had a rifle out. I don't see it on film. This guy had a rifle out and no one noticed it. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Folks, take a look at the video on Redacted. What I'm going to do too is post an excellent video by a YouTuber who has a former military member with gun experience, a sniper from the military, who, you know, is talking about how, in his opinion, it's unlikely this alleged assassin did the shooting. Right? Understand, you know, to hit someone with the first shot from 200 yards away is an accomplishment. Especially when you're not a professional assassin. You have all this adrenaline. You have fear of detection. You have a sense that there are cameras around you. And if we are to believe the police version, this guy would have had to have taken the gun out of his pants. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. I'll have links to, I'll try to put a link to Redacted. I'll try to put a link to the military sniper interview at murder777.blogspot.com. Again, it's murder777.blogspot.com, so you could review those videos in conjunction with this one. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comments section. Thanks for stopping by.